Welcome to Feel, Peel, Thrive, formerly Food Feels Banana Peels, a holistic podcast created to inspire a shift in perspective. Here, we explore what it really means to feel, peel back the layers, and thrive from the inside out. Each episode invites you to consider a shift in your perspective on what it truly means to be healthy, beyond quick fixes or trends, and to see wellness as an empowered, inside-out journey rooted in awareness, accountability, and self-trust. I'm your host, Laura Pifer, and I'm here to guide honest, heart-centered conversations that help you reconnect with your body, realign with your values, and live with greater clarity, connection, and vitality. Because when we learn to feel, we can heal. And when we peel back the stories that hold us back, we make space to thrive. And welcome back to Feel, Peel, Thrive, where we slow things down, we get curious, and we explore what it really means to live in our bodies with more awareness, compassion, and resilience. Today's conversation is a powerful reminder that sometimes our greatest teachers show up through pain, and that healing doesn't always come from pushing harder, but from learning how to listen differently. I'm really excited because today I'm joined by Dan Esposito, founder of the Undu Method, a former NFL player, elite track and field athlete, and national level competitor who knows what it takes to train, perform, and succeed at the highest levels of sport. Dan's early life was shaped by discipline, intensity, and deep trust in his body's ability to perform until one day that relationship began to change. After years of high-level athletics, Dan found himself navigating chronic pain, autoimmune challenges, fibromyalgia, and connective tissue issues that no amount of grit, conditioning, or conventional protocols seemed to resolve. For someone whose identity had been built around strength, movement, and performance, this was both physically and emotionally disorienting. Rather than walking away from his body, Dan leaned in. He became a student of his own physiology, exploring fascia, inflammation, mobility, mindset, and recovery through the lens of someone who had already mastered elite performance. What emerged from that process is the Undu Method, a holistic practical system designed to help people undo the patterns, the habits, and the stressors that keep the body stuck in pain or limitation. His journey also led to the creation of Flexibility Fuel, which we'll chat a little bit about both of these today, a supplement formulated to support connective tissue health, muscle recovery, and mobility. It's not a quick fix, but it's a part of a larger, more integrated approach to healing and longevity. This is a conversation about redefining strength, about what happens when an elite athlete has to unlearn pushing through pain and instead discovers a deeper, more sustainable relationship with the body and the nervous system. Whether you're a former athlete, someone living with chronic pain, or simply curious about new ways of understanding movement and healing, I think this episode will meet you right where you are. Let's dive in. Thanks so much, Dan, for being here today. It's an honor to chat with you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I am going to save that forever. Oh my gosh. I really appreciate that. I appreciate you having me here, and I'm excited to help other people's maybe find a path in their own chronic pain healing.
Amazing. Well, you have quite a journey, and I would love for you to begin to, share where things have been and where things, how everything came into alignment for you. Let's
Yeah.
just say that.
Sure, sure. I'd like to start the journey at my very young age because I think a lot of us, especially children of the 80s, suffered from some sort of physical, emotional abuse, things like that. It was a trying time. I think a lot of our fathers and stepfathers had come back from war and, were traumatized themselves. And so, I grew up. My parents got divorced when I was about 4 years old. My mother remarried twice to men who were both alcoholics, abusive. And so, sort of during that journey, I ended up going to five different elementary schools, moving back and forth from my mother to my father, in with the new guy, things like that. And the way I would make friends, my identity was wrapped around my ability to be athletic and to contribute, to the phys ed kickball team and, be the best at the sports that we played. And that's the way that I identified and made friends. And eventually I think it's interesting to talk about some spirituality stuff that happened at this point as well. I grew up in a Lutheran household, but quickly through the abuse became an atheist, thinking God can't exist. And there were two passages in the Bible that stuck with me really, really, for my whole life and were the catalyst and what I would utilize is why I did not believe in a higher power. And that was don't eat swine for it's unclean. And I thought, how arbitrary is that? And why would a God who created us create that rule of something that tastes so good? And then I later find out when you eat swine, it has massive implications in disease and chronic pain, especially chronic pain. And then don't mix linen and wool. And that was another thing where I was like, that also is an arbitrary thing, but everything in the world is energy, and energy, when you have two things with different energies, they transfer electrons back and forth. And so when you put linen and wool together, it creates a dead field of energy, which creates oxidative stress, free radicals inside your body. When you wear them separately, they're donating electrons, pairing those free radicals, so they're not attacking your tissue and creating oxidative stress. So I just think that that was a really important thing because around that time, that's when I, developed those, negative beliefs toward a higher power. So when you talk about a path, why would those two things stick with me so hard? And they are such huge implications in chronic pain. It's almost like those thoughts were put into my head at a young age so I could utilize them in sort of that rebirth of myself, being connected to a higher power. But so, I didn't play football growing up. I was a baseball player. I was pretty fast. I ran some track in middle school and in elementary school. Then there was a guy who came to our school who was faster than me and was the top athlete, and it kind of put me in a little bit of a tailspin because I was like, well, I guess I'm not the best anymore. But so I was playing baseball, and the two guys who played baseball in my position ahead of me were two of the greatest catchers in high school baseball history. Same age, one of them went on to play for the Boston Red Sox for 12 years or something like that. So I decided I was going to play football as a senior, and I went out for the football team. I walked on to a small school in Millersville. I ended up not starting till the third game of my senior season, where I became the Division II National Player of the Week, 300 and whatever yards I had. And from that point on, I was the starter. I was supposed to start my junior year, but, scholarships and politics and, college football came into play. And so, but I always knew that I could play in the NFL. I knew from the time I was in fifth grade, I saw a football game and I saw a running back do something. And I was like, I can do that, because I would beat all the kids in my neighborhood that were older than me. So, got picked up by the Redskins as a undrafted free agent. Broke my jaw on my first play ever in two places.
Wow.
All my teeth over here were pointed this way. This, one went that way, and didn't tell the coaches. I played the entire game with a broken jaw in two places, and so I can handle pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the point. It's not like I'm
Mm-hmm.
afraid of pain. I can push through pain. The pain of fibromyalgia and degenerative arthritis, it was unbearable. Like, I mean, it's a different type of pain that really changes the structure of your brain. But, and then my so I got an injury settlement. The next year I was picked up by the Saints. That's when I started having really bad shoulder problems. And it was the first time something wasn't healing. And, I didn't really mention it to the training staff because I didn't want to get cut. Tried to play through it, wasn't doing well, broke my jaw again, got punched by a guy in practice, sucker punched by a guy in practice, got released, got called back the first week of the season. I was with the Saints for, a few weeks during the regular season. And then because, my shoulder, I couldn't even do a push-up. I didn't look good out there and I got released again. And that was kind of the end of it because I knew like my body wasn't feeling great. Like I couldn't perform at that high level. But if I would have known what I know now, I could have healed that very
Mm-hmm.
easily. Like, I mean, in the terms of athletics and sports and, college and pro level, Like I really feel like my method and the supplement can help extend careers because it's breaking down that stuff in the soft tissue that's causing that injury. But anyway, so and then I was, I didn't treat myself well. I wasn't completely unhealthy. Was stiffening up a little bit. But then when I started a new business in the energy business where I broker electricity and gas, and I was eating pizza all the time, like two large pizzas a day. Just, I'm going to start this business. I don't know anything about the energy management business, but I know this is the future and I'm, going to figure this out. And eventually we became a top, fastest growing company in Philadelphia for 2 years in a row. But I got really sick during that time. My lymphatic system stopped draining, probably because of all the inflammation from the pizza that I was
Hmm.
eating. I was, a lot of stress. I had a baby on the way. A few years earlier, a breakup had happened with someone that I really cared about, and it kind of, created a lot of stress as well. And
Compiles, yeah, adds up.
yeah, and I used to really discount the mental stress trauma aspect of chronic pain until I started really digging into DNA and pathways of, how certain events happen in the body that can trigger things that cause inflammation. Chronic stress causes chronic inflammation.
Hmm.
Chronic inflammation causes a thyroid response. Then you start having thyroid issues, and it's kind of all interconnected. But and then I was running around at about 265 pounds. I played at about 215, 218. So I'm really heavy at this point. The chronic pain didn't really set in too much yet. It was starting to get there. But I started juicing spinach and things like that to help, thinking these superfoods were really going to help. But inside spinach and certain other things that I was juicing is a little molecule that causes kidney stone deposits all throughout your body. They're called oxalates, and the molecule is called oxalic acid. So when you juice spinach or you're drinking beet powder, which is highly contains a high amount of oxalates or oxalic acid, you're going to then deposit all these crystallizations. And when that happened, there's this sort of just domino effect of things that happen in the body where this process stops, this process gets impaired, these cells turn into bone producing cells, and all this junk happens. And that's when the real stiffness and massive pain started setting in. And I was 3 months before my second son's birthday. I'm 265 pounds. I've got a diagnosis of fibromyalgia now, degenerative arthritis. I've already had 5 shoulder surgeries, a couple knee surgeries, 3 foot surgeries. And the surgeons were like, you got to start getting joint replacements at 50. And I was like, well, what's wrong? And they just said, well, your muscles are tangled. So I'm like, well, what does that mean that my muscles are tangled? How do muscles get tangled? If they would have said all these proteins are depositing inside your tissues from inflammation and bad collagen growth, I could have maybe went and gone and studied something like that. But instead, I'm like fantasizing about pulling my skin back and untangling my muscles, right? Which is kind of what I did eventually, the Undu Method, without pulling the skin back. So 3 months before my second son's birthday, every single movement was chronic pain. I mean, sleeping was painful. Standing in one place, sitting in one place for too long was painful. Everything was massively painful. And I just said out loud to the universe, I said, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to figure this out. And I just started for the first year, like just ripping my body apart and like just trying to pull and stretch. And I just thought if I stretch, I'm going to be able to pull it apart. But it turns out the things that are binding us together, there's certain proteins and other things that are binding us together. Well, these molecular bonds, especially collagen, they're 7 times stronger than steel when they set in. So I'm not going to be able to pull myself apart. Like I'll hear some cracking and stuff happening, but that's like a water bottle that cracks and it doesn't break apart. It's the same thing that's happening internally. So what I created and what I figured out along the way is that these things that are insoluble in the body, they're only insoluble until you cleave them at the chemical bond, right?
Hmm.
And that opens it up. Now it's soluble, right? So
Hmm.
you have to find certain foods, spices, supplements, compounds, nutrients, whatever, that's going to add that electron to that thing to break it apart. And
Hmm.
now things start falling apart. And when it starts happening, it's the most hopeful thing that you'll ever experience because you're like, oh wow. And it's a lot of times because the way that your brain processes pain, and this is where everybody thinks fibromyalgia is a neurological system disorder. It's not a disorder. It's working perfectly. It's over aggravated. So at the end of your nerves, you have these nociceptors. They're pain receptors, but I really think they're sensory perceptors,
Hmm.
right? It's like your finger is a sensory perceptor. If you push it too hard, well, it was still a sensory perceptor. It's just painful now. So it's not a pain receptor. So anyway, these pain receptors in your fascia, where most of this pain is happening, they're 7 times more sensitive than in your soft tissue where there's no damage. So that's where the pain is. And your brain can only hang on to a certain number of pain points at a time. So that's why pain moves around, right? People are like, why does my pain move around so much? Well,
Hmm.
you've aggravated this side a little bit more. You've got the same thing happening over here, but now this one's being aggravated, sending the signal. It just disappears. It'll just disappear when for a lot of people who have taken my supplement, you're just walking around all of a sudden, you're like, it feels like a smush, like a sponge, just kind of smushing, and you feel the blood flow come back into that area. And it's almost like the clouds open and the angels start singing every time it happens. So it's a really unique experience to unwind or undo chronic pain that most people have yet to experience. But when they do, for me and for everyone so far that's taken this has pretty much reordered a bottle. It's the most addictive thing that you can do is to get healthier and to get
Hmm.
less painful. So yeah.
For sure. So let's talk about a couple things in there because that
Oh,
was
let me add one more thing.
okay.
So I
Okay.
forgot. At 50 years old, instead of getting the knee replacement started, I won 2 gold medals in United States Track and
Yes.
Field Masters National Outdoor Championship. I'm in like a 3 or 4 time All-American at this point. I was ranked in the top 15 in the world last year. So, and most people aren't going to try to go from massive chronic pain, where I'm telling you, as bad as anybody is, I was right there with you, to world-class athlete. They're kind of just
Hmm.
hoping to do the laundry and tie their shoes without pain, right? And
Right.
that's so I had to get to this point to prove that this method works. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
And you and I had some conversations initially because we talked a little bit about mindset. And I believe that mindset as a professional athlete, you have something already that a lot of people likely don't have. I've never played that level of sport,
Hmm.
anywhere near that level of sport, but even as an athlete, like never would I have ever experienced the kind of like from chronic pain to I can do this. I know I can do this. I think there is something about mindset that needs to be addressed firsthand when we are looking at chronic pain. Because if
Yeah.
we don't believe that we can heal, and I would say chronic pain and I would say acute pain, I would say any kind of illness, imbalance, dis-ease,
Yeah.
we need to first look at our mindset and ask ourselves, do I believe that I can heal? And
Right.
if the answer is no, then we need to figure out the belief systems that are holding us back. Because
I
if
agree.
if what we think we create, we are not going to be able to heal
Yeah.
ourselves if we don't truly believe that we can.
Yeah. So one of the guys that I, was going to for advice in the beginning, he's a great guy. I love him. He's got his, advanced degrees in physiology. He's a personal trainer for high level, income people. And I told him about my diagnosis. He's like, there's just nothing you can do. It's forever.
Hmm.
And now he buys my supplement. Like he's subscribed, like he buys it all the time. He refers it out to his clients. So you have to you there was a Stanford study, and I'm stealing this data from Andrew Huberman, but it was a Stanford study that showed that the most successful people all had one thing in common, and they're delusional.
Hmm.
No, it's like you have to I
Hmm.
started an energy business with zero experience in the energy market. I played in the NFL with just walking on to a Division II school and only starting 1 year in college, not even a full year. And I knew I was going to play. I have to also believe, because I don't think it's all my self-motivation. Because if you look at the high level athletes, a lot of them are MTHFR. right? A lot of
Hmm.
Olympic athletes. And I believe that's a spark that we have that kind of, we got to work this out. We got to run this spark off. We got to get this fire out of our body. I'm also type O negative blood, and the negative blood types have, been shown to be higher intuition, maybe a greater connection with, the energy of the universe. And, I honestly believe that the stars have downloaded information to me with, meditating on them. So I don't want to, at the beginning of this process, when I start unwinding things, I'm like, I'm a genius. I'm this, I'm this. And I just realized that the information was being fed to me from a greater source. It wasn't me coming up with this. I got a C in college biology because I would sit at the front of the auditorium where all the smart people were, because the professor, who was my father's professor when he went to school there, with big, thick glasses, would sit at the back of the auditorium during test day, and I would just cheat off the guy next to me because I was lost. I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't tell you what mitochondria was that time, or a cell, or an atom, or I had no idea. And so, it's basically 8 years of me studying biology, physiology,
Hmm.
chronic pain,
Yeah.
methylation, which, DNA, things like that, because I don't want to be in a conversation where I don't have an idea of what the answer is, or don't have
Hmm.
backing to my, proof to what I talk about. So I would listen to podcasts on experts over and over and over again. They would say something, and then I would Google it, and then I would Google the things that I didn't know that were in there. And it just became this obsession for almost a decade, because I literally lost, I mean, I lost over a decade of my life to chronic pain. And it was days where both my sons were young boys, and it's a shame that, my first son had to deal with a worse version of me during
Hmm.
that time. And that's, you know, I'm I am thankful that I know that rebirth is possible.
For
So
sure.
yeah,
So you talked a little bit about MTHFR, and most people aren't going to know that about the methylation pathway in as simplistic terms. If we
yeah,
can we help people with that? And the reason that you've found that this is very important. This has been important in my own journey. While I've never been actually genetically tested for it, I am quite certain that I have issues with methylation. Supplementation has been instrumental in helping me. I'm also an O blood type. I believe O blood types are also very, very sensitive to toxins.
mm,
I believe that we're sensitive to energy, we're sensitive to toxins. So for people to know these things in and about themselves and find
yeah.
out these details, I believe can be really, really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. So to make it really simple, so there's a bunch of different sort of pathways or systems within the body, and two really important ones when you want to get healthy is your methylation cycle and your detox cycle, right? And they kind of work together. If you're not methylating well, you can't
Hmm.
detox well. When you talk about toxins, the two red ones in mine are my ability to detox heavy metals. So when I had issues with heavy metals where I had to do heavy metal cleanses, they create a lot of confusion,
Hmm.
dementia type stuff, inflammation, right? So that's why I think it's important to get your DNA tested. And if you work with me, I just add that on. I can just run it through this free system to look at your methylation and detox cycle. So methylation, this is the most important one. It's when you eat something, your body has to methylate it to make it usable, right? So you have DNA from both parents in this methylation system that are either work well or they're slow, right?
Hmm.
And so you can have two from both parents that work well, one that works well, one that works slow, or both that work slow.
Hmm.
My MTHFR, one of them is bad. It's the Italian side of me. It's
Me
very
too.
prevalent in the
Yep.
Italians. Yeah.
Yep.
And if you have a double polymorphism of it, it'll misdiagnose as bipolarism, meaning both parents gave you a bad gene. It can
Hmm.
misdiagnose as bipolarism. But that seems to be only in America, not in Italy. I think it's because of folic acid, and we can get the folic acid later, but it's a toxin, it's a poison. I think everyone should get it out of their diet. Anyway, so what this gene does, the MTHFR, it's the cornerstone for the whole thing. It's the crank. It gets everything moving. But another really important thing that it does, and this is why folic acid impairs this, is it creates a protein that goes around the mast cell to make sure you're not giving off histamine. So people who have mast cell activation syndrome are more than likely MTHFR in not creating that coating, that protein around the mast cell. And when that mast cell gives off histamine, you're in fight or flight, which when there's
Hmm.
no danger, it's just basically anxiety, right? And when you consume folic acid, for most people, it won't convert into that protein and it blocks folate, which is the thing you should be using to make that protein. It blocks that ability to bind to that receptor because you've got folic acid in here.
And you're talking more about the synthetic form, right?
The
That's put
synthetic form
into
is
all of foods. We say, oh, we're
bread.
enriching things
Yeah.
with all of these crap that doesn't help the body. Yeah.
Yeah, so for the parents out there, this is really important. So you can be giving your child a multivitamin in the morning and thinking that it's good. And I just use a Flintstones chewable. So a Flintstones chewable is 1/3 of the upper limit of folic acid before it becomes similar to a neurotoxin, right? So you're 1/3 of the way there. And then you give your kid a bowl of cereal that's also got a bunch of folic acid in it. Now
Hmm.
you're 3/4 the way there, maybe, halfway there. Then they go to school. Maybe they get an early morning snack, some kind of energy bar or something like that. They have a slice of pizza for lunch, come home and have a spaghetti. Now they're at the upper limit and they've got
Hmm.
ADD,
Hmm.
right? Or they don't, but now they're not able to manage that histamine and they're just wired. The other thing is, now you do this in conjunction, and this is for parents and doesn't have anything to do with chronic pain, but I think it's important to know the LED lights that these kids are sitting under now in school are constantly flickering. When you slow it
Hmm.
down, you can see the constant flicker. The eyes won't pick it up, but the brain will pick
Hmm.
it up, and that creates anxiety. So now we've
Right.
fed our kid this toxin that's contributing to anxiety where they can't sit around and then they've got the lights above them creating even more of a stimulated environment. And and then we rely on these doctors, that don't have any education about any of this stuff
Hmm. Hmm.
to fix it. And they give the kid a drug. And the kids, this is another thing I stole. The kids aren't deficient in a drug. Like that's not their problem.
No,
So
it's a nutrients. It's
you're
nutrients.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're the most
So
undernourished, overfed population in history, and we have the most chronic and acute disease ever.
yeah.
And where does it come from? A lot of different areas, but I would definitely agree that the food system and
Mhm.
our lifestyle are a
Yeah.
huge part of it,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. That's
Absolutely.
great. That's great information.
Yeah. And just talking about lifestyle, I don't know if you're going to get to this later. We talk about clothing in the
Hmm.
Undu Method. I,
Hmm.
talked about that before. So, this sweatshirt is one of the only things that I have left that's synthetic, and then two other shirts that have Undu Method on it because I bought that before I learned about the fabrics. But the frequency of fabrics is so important. And we also talk about the frequency of our bed, the fabric on the bed as well. And people are having just trouble sleeping at night. And so, our body resonates at a frequency of like 80 to 100 hertz. It's hertz or megahertz. And so when we wear these fabrics, they're at a frequency of 15. So what that means is our body is donating an electron to the fabric. So we're losing a paired electron, and this becomes a free radical, which is going to cause inflammation and oxidative stress. And it's noise. It's noise in the brain, right? And
Hmm.
so you've have all this noise going on in the body because we're wearing we have poor clothing choices, poor bed choices. And so for people who are looking for, maybe better ways to sleep, I always encourage them to look at like a grounding blanket,
Hmm.
changing their clothing, going to bed in some linen clothes, get linen sheets, things like that. And you'll find that your sleep improves dramatically. When I first bought my first linen or my first grounding sheet, I bought a really cheap one on Amazon. It wasn't fitted. I didn't know if it was working or not. I just, sometimes you don't know when something's working. And so I'm sleeping in bed and I was, having actually really good sleep. And then the cord broke. For the next 3 days, I couldn't sleep. So I was like, okay, it definitely is working. So I went and bought a fitted one, laid in the bed, and it just feels like a warm, it's just a different feeling when you lay down on a grounding blanket.
Amazing. And they have grounding mats, right? I mean, this is
Hmm.
this is really, really important information because we we're a society now that doesn't generally spend time with Mother Earth the way that other societies have, right?
Yeah.
How many people go barefoot on the earth for
Yeah.
that electron exchange, right? Like very, very few people, unless you are conscious. You and I talk about hugging trees.
Yeah.
I have done that for decades now,
Did it
and now
yesterday. So
my kids don't even say anything about it. They just know there's
yeah.
a big beautiful tree. Mom's drawn to it. She's
Yeah.
gonna hug it, and I feel great, right? And this is a real thing. Like these are
Yeah.
the free the free gifts that Mother Nature can bring us. Like, not
Right.
everything has to cost a lot of money. Going
Right.
outside, getting some sunshine,
Yeah.
right? These are the kinds of things that don't cost a ton of money that everyone can experience to some degree, that we have to come back to a more natural lifestyle. And if we
Yeah.
have the ability to buy things like grounding sheets and those kinds of things, absolutely. Full disclosure, I just ordered a grounding blanket.
Oh, good.
I work with a grounding mat underneath my desk.
Yeah.
I do spend a fair bit of time outside whenever I can, but we just had like 3 feet of snow yesterday and
Wow.
whatever. So it's not as much.
Yeah.
It's not the same way in the winter, no bare feet anyway. But I'm really, really looking forward to that, and I
Really,
will
yeah.
find out those measurable effects
Yep.
because I monitor a lot with like my watch and my HRV and like all those different kinds of things, which I
Yeah.
think can be a beautiful tool for people as well to navigate some of this. Obviously, seeing how you feel, and then there are metrics and numbers don't lie.
Right.
So if we have the ability to measure some of these implements this way, I think it can be a very helpful tool. Just another tool in kind of, I say, our tool belt that we're gathering toward a healthier us. And
Right.
that's the difference. Like, I think people, in my experience, would like a really quick and easy fix. We've come to this society that really wants things to be, we give our power away. We say, Doctor, fix me. Tell me what I need. Here's your pill. Okay. So doctors know about dis-ease, right? They don't learn about health.
Right.
I've talked to doctors on the podcast about this. They learn very, very little about health. They have, you know, one or two classes in nutrition in their entire, 10 years of schooling. And so
Yeah.
we need to advocate for ourselves and figure out what it is from a health standpoint, I believe, that we need, and then seek out that support in other areas, like
Yeah.
holistic people who are supporting this.
Yeah. At the beginning of this, journey of me trying to figure out what I was going to do with all of this, I was like, I got to get certified in something, when I was thought it was funny because my stepmom has her doctorate in nutrition and she comes to me for this stuff,
Hmm.
right? And the doctor that I went to, my general practitioner, I've told, gone to him with some things that he just has no idea about.
Hmm.
But even when I got my certification through NASM for as a nutritional coach or whatever it was, I was looking at this. I'm like, all of this is wrong. Like, there's no
Hmm.
nutrients in this food. And one of the things that I created is called the world's greatest shopping list. Can I show it? Can I share my screen? Is that
Yeah, sure,
possible? Okay.
absolutely. If you share your screen, I think it should pop right up.
Let me see if, how do I do this? Share. Okay.
Think you should be able to now.
All right. Yeah. Let me do this. Here we go. Okay, can we see that now?
No. Oh, yes, there it is.
Okay, so I put this spreadsheet together. I think I can make it bigger. I
Yeah.
put this spreadsheet together, and you need 90 nutrients as a human that your body cannot make on its own, can't synthesize from other things, and they're essential. Like you need all
Hmm.
of them, right? So it's vitamin, these are the nutrients, vitamin A, B, choline, C, things like that. And then your amino acids, your minerals, your fats. And then if you look here at your nutrients, most of them are coming from your animal products, right? We're told not to stay away from our animal products. And then when you start looking over here, like just like vitamin E. which is hard to get anywhere except for sunflower seeds. But for like
Hmm.
something like spinach, you would need 107 cups of spinach. And that's like the top thing, 10 cups of asparagus. It's the top,
Yeah.
vegetable source of
Yeah.
it. And then
Hmm.
your gut health has to be perfect to make
Hmm.
the conversion to
Correct.
make it usable by a human, right? We're not the same as a cow. I want to I guess I'll stop sharing. Well, let me just actually give you. So, if people can't hit all of these things, and I don't, and a lot of it's liver that you'll see, and people aren't going to be eating liver. Your amino acids, you can't get any of them out of the vegetable, shellfish, legumes, et cetera. It's
Right.
all your animal products, and they're
Yeah.
essential amino acids,
Hmm.
minerals, and then your fats, and you can see where to get them from. I don't get close to this. So I think everyone should have a methylated multivitamin as
Hmm.
part of their toolkit, an essential amino acid supplement, which, Flexibility Fuel is an essential amino acid supplement with the proprietary blend. A mineral supplement, because then when you start looking at the minerals, I mean, there's so many things in here that you're just, where do I get all this from? So a good mineral supplement, and then your fats, just eat a little bit of fish and eat, some butter, and you'll get your fats. Another interesting thing is you look at these vitamins here, vitamin A, D, E, and K, they're all fat soluble.
Hmm.
And what that means is you must have fat in your stomach at the time you take it in order to be able to get these things out of it. And I'm sure 99% of people don't know that. So they're taking a multivitamin, but they're going to be
Hmm.
deficient A, D, E, and K, which are
Yeah.
super important, especially D, E, and K for detoxification, sending the bone minerals to the correct place, fascia building, things like that. So a lot of us are going to be deficient anyway because we're not getting close to these targets, but then we're not, eating fat with our stuff, and it's gonna, we're not gonna be able to absorb it. So yeah,
Absolutely. No, those are great points. And I mean, I think also when we are in the stage of disease, whatever type of chronic pain or any of those things, we are already so deficient in many vitamins and minerals. So even just a normal supplementation protocol is likely not going to bring us to where we need to be. And this is the thing, and this is where working with somebody who understands
yeah,
the physiology of the body can be so helpful because supplementing for health and supplementing for dis-ease or
yeah, two
imbalance
different
is
things.
very,
Yeah.
very different. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just give you an idea real quickly of how you get fibromyalgia and chronic pain. It's a very simple sort of three things that are happening for the most part, right? You have an event that creates inflammation, and inflammation is a healing cycle. Don't think of it as this event that's trying to hurt you. It is your actual healing cycle. Medicine will tell you it's your body attacking itself. It's not. So it starts with a cytokine release, which then recruits the C-reactive proteins. So most people who have rheumatoid arthritis will know that term, C-reactive proteins. That's what
Hmm.
they measure in the blood for
Yeah.
rheumatoid arthritis, right? Well, that's just a response to something that's you're either putting a toxin, something the body doesn't want, a manufactured food, a seed oil. It could be a stressor, mental stressor, or it was due to an injury. And then that recruits the glue, which creates the clot, right? And then white blood cells come to the area to try to repair. You get a collagen response. It's very important, this collagen response. That clot becomes a fibrin. This matrix they call scar tissue. They're not
Hmm.
scars, right? They can be broken down,
Hmm.
right? They're
Hmm.
proteins. So this collagen that's built has to be built with the eight ingredients that you need to build healthy collagen, right? So every little inflammation event that we have, we're creating these two events, right? Which then causes oxidative stress as well, right? Which is the free radicals. So all three of those things are going to happen during every inflammation event. Every time we put these manufactured foods in our body, the inflammation event comes on. Every time we eat food out, at a restaurant with the seed oils, we have a little inflammation event. And so the fibrin that's left behind, the scar tissue, can be broken down naturally by the body on its own. It only happens at 20 plus hours of fasting. That's when these enzymes released from your liver start scouring the body and like Pac-Man start cutting down these proteins that makes the body be able to take it apart. Most people aren't going to fast. So
Hmm.
for the people who can't get flexibility fuel, all the ingredients are on my website. You can just go there and order them independently if you want. But if you just want an easy fix, you can try the flexibility fuel. In flexibility fuel are these proteolytic enzymes which are massively beneficial when you have an empty stomach because it's going to try to digest your food if the food's in there. Empty stomach, and then immediately they start scouring the body for these proteins and start snipping them when they come in contact with them. And so for some people, and a lot of people on day one, they feel something, they can feel something happen when they're doing this, or they're just taking this the enzymes on their own. Now, it's not the most effective enzyme, right? So nattokinase would be the most effective enzyme. So what I do is I take my flexibility fuel every day, and then I'll supplement with nattokinase enzymes. Nattokinase is much more expensive, right? So that's why I put the second best one in the supplement. So it's a financially viable thing for most people. But in the Undu Method, I talk about all of these supplements and all of the conditions that are related to chronic pain. I targeted six of them that they're beneficial for. So when you go and you buy your supplementation, you can say, okay, well, this one's beneficial for oxidative stress, glycation, and inflammation. I want that one. And so is this one, but it also is good for biofilms, right? So, you can kind of make better choices about what supplements because you're more intentional about what they're going to do for you. And when you know who the enemies are, fibrins, glycation, oxidation, poor collagen growth, uh, biofilms, what's the oxalates,
Hmm.
um, poor nutrition, and dehydration, right? Those are the main things. There's a new one that I'm learning about called ossification, which turns
Mm.
the muscles to bone, and that's
Bone. Yeah.
due to a lot of phosphates, which is
Hmm.
very high in your sodas. So the
Yes.
soda drinkers, which my mom was one, and she had fibromyalgia really bad as well. You're basically turning your muscles into bone if you're drinking a lot of soda.
Hmm.
But that stuff can be broken down. They say it can't, and when you kind of Google things, but then when you look at the science of how things are broken down, you
Hmm.
know that there's always something that's going to break that chemical bond, whether it's sound healing, lasers, frequency, a supplement, water. Water creates hydrolysis, and that cleaves chemical bonds. And so there's a lot of different ways, and knowing the science, and like we talked about grounding earlier, I wanted to get back to that in the Undu Method. I'm like, okay, well, ground, but why ground? Well, you ground because here's what's happening scientifically. All these electrons are coming up from the earth, surrounding all of your blood cells, causing them to repel, causing better blood flow, plus the pairing of those free radicals, right? So
Hmm.
now when you know that, you're like, okay, I got to go get my grounding in today, right? Why do you breathe through your nose? When you breathe through your nose, you take an amino acid that makes it become nitric oxide. That makes fibrins dissolve, so fibrins cannot form. So people who don't breathe through their nose well, they know they have to be more intentional about deep breathing, right? The last hour that we've been sitting here, we've only breathed deeply enough to support the movement that we're having, right? And so we're not breathing deeply mostly throughout
Hmm.
the day because we're sitting here at computer screens all day. So knowing how to breathe properly and just being intentional about healing and knowing the science behind it was my motivation,
Hmm.
because I knew that people
Right.
needed to know why. Like you
Right.
say go do acupuncture, but why? You say
Hmm.
go ground, but why?
Yeah.
Things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm very much a why person as well, which is why I did school for nutrition and science and all of these things because I needed to know for me. And I think that people like us who are trying to share this information, it's important to have the why because there will be people who will want to know that down to that very scientific cellular level. And you are the guy to go to because you have that all, you have all of that information. You and I talked
Yeah.
extensively about that behind the scenes. And then there are going to be people who I think are a little bit more experiential. And this is where I come in and support people in a little bit of a different way. Absolutely. Nutrition is a huge part of it, grounding, mindfulness, all of these things. And what I bring in is somatics. And I believe somatics are a huge part of this. You said, you brought up sound healing and vibration, right? So this is working with the non-physical aspects of our bodies because those connective tissues that you're talking about that bind the body, those are also in Eastern philosophy holding the emotions that are unprocessed that we have not had the capacity to deal with when the experience occurred. So when it was the trauma, and then basically what happens is we store this in our bodies, and then we get these. nervous system cycles that begin, and we get a feeling or an experience in our body brings on an emotion. 2/100ths of a second later we have a thought in our mind, but that 2/100ths of a second, if you don't know, if you are not connected to your body enough to feel that emotion, you don't even catch that, and all of a sudden you are in this cycle that begins with your head and your mind and your feelings and all of this kind of stuff that gets very toxic. And that's where having years of anxiety and depression and chronic pain and then my acute pain experiences, I realized for me a huge trigger was the nervous system, and I started with food. Food for me was incredibly important. Food and lifestyle, absolutely. They were so important to begin to clear some of that fog, right? That
Yeah.
fog that's there, that inflammation in the physical body, all of those things. And I believe when we work with all of these systems together, then we can begin to get even into those deeper layers and levels of what's going on, because we are complex beings. And I don't think it's necessarily complex to figure out once you start to feel into your body and to understand it and the signs that it tells you. But getting past all of that external noise and all of the things that we feel that we should do and that are fed to us, and everybody has an opinion about what's good and what isn't good, when we really start to connect with who we are and what begins to work for us, we realize that being these unique and individual beings, certain things are going to work for us and certain things
Yeah.
won't.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because for the most part, I think we're very similar. I mean, we're a bunch of meat and collagen and bone and water, you know. So in that way, we're very, very similar. But like, for example, I would love to put sulfur in my supplement because it's super, super beneficial. I think a lot of people who have good success with like an Epsom salt bath or
Hmm.
taking MSM.
Hmm.
But for me, and I talk about this a lot as well, is that sulfur causes a massive anxiety response in my body where
Okay.
I'm like, I can't even play around with it at all because it puts me in fight or flight that where I don't even have that time to respond. I'm just reacting to everything. And, if you're driving next, with me in the car, I'm yelling at everybody on the road. And I'm like, why? I'm telling myself to calm down, but I can't calm down because
Hmm.
I'm in fight or flight. And when you're
Right.
there, you're just in this survival mode. And, um, having the wherewithal to know that that is actually happening and it's not an external pressor, that's
Yes.
causing it, that it's
Hmm.
you internally, and knowing which foods can, potentially
Hmm.
trigger that response is
Yes.
important because
Coffee is another one. Coffee is, for me, is a huge one. Triggers anxiety big time.
does it? Yeah, it
Yeah.
really messes up my gut. I have problems with 5 hour energy. If you want to know my addictions, it's 5 hour energy. So, but I'm working on it. So I've gotten a lot of other things out of the way. I used to be a huge sugar eater. Like I mean,
Me too.
big time. My dad owned
Yeah.
water ice stores, Italian water ice and ice cream stores, and
Okay.
being a young athlete, you can eat all that all you
Yeah.
want. And then, you start doing it later on. I would eat four of those Dairy Queen blizzards a week. And I
Yeah.
realized I have 3 times the amount of sugar every single day when
Hmm.
I'm doing that. And what that's doing is when that sugar gets in your system and interacts with fat or proteins, it's causing a stickiness. Like it's called glycation,
Hmm.
right? We talked about this with pig. And I want to talk about glycation just a little bit because I think it's really important. Most people don't know about it.
Hmm.
So it's when you mix a sugar molecule with a fat or a protein. So when you have sugar and high fructose corn syrup has 10 times the glycation effect. It's like when you barbecue chicken and you have that glaze of barbecue that's a real sticky kind of protein right against the skin. That's happening internally when you do these things, right? So your body can handle 15,000 units of glycation on a daily basis.
Okay.
3 strips of bacon is 90,000, right? So people who are doing these keto diets where they're eating a
Hmm.
lot of bacon are just causing like a cement mixer effect to happen. Now that glycation is going to cause oxidative stress
Hmm.
as well as inflammation. So it becomes this slow,
Hmm.
working thing that's happening in your body that you'll never blame on bacon because it didn't happen the first day you ate bacon. It happened the 3,000th day you ate bacon, and now
Right.
you're stuck together. But having the knowledge to put that
Hmm.
bacon away is, power, it's powerful, and saying, let's have a polyflavonoid like the skin of an apple contains rutin, which will break down the glycation. So, right, the apple a day keeps the doctor away. And also every time you wear these clothes, it creates glycation when you're wearing the polyester clothes. It creates a glycation events on every single electron transference.
Yeah, it's when you start to begin to look into, and I want to say this because I think I know in the beginning of my journey it was very overwhelming. There's a lot of information, right? And we're giving a lot of information today. And I think it's really important to know that we have to start somewhere, right? We
Yeah.
have to start somewhere, and you take what aligns for you right now and start there. Take a step forward. It doesn't have to be all of a sudden I'm cutting out every single, nutrient that doesn't serve me. I'm changing all my clothes. I'm changing my bed linens. Like I'm doing all of these things. All of a sudden your brain's going to just like blow,
Yeah.
like you're not going to be able to handle it. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of taking the bits of information that begin you on a different path. Start one step at a time. And then let's talk a little bit about the undo method, because this actually
Yeah.
becomes a process that someone could potentially follow,
Yeah.
that could begin to guide them on a journey
Yeah.
for that improvement.
Yeah, so what it is a playbook, right? It's not a healing tool. It's not going to heal. The only thing that can heal someone is themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I
Right.
just want to make that clear that I'm not claiming to heal or treat anyone. But everything that's in the Undo method is 100% backed by scientific studies, third-party studies. You can find in the National Institute of Health or other, websites that have the studies. And so it gives you an idea. Here are the offenders, here are the pain makers, right? This is why they're causing pain. This is how you can break these things down with certain supplements or foods, techniques, things like that. And so, we talked about it before. When I started this journey, I would listen to a podcast over and over and over and over again until I got it. So it's a similar concept to the Undo method. So there's two ways that you can acquire it, right? So if you're in the United States, because I can't ship my supplement outside of the United States, it's $196 to have it for life with all the updates. You'll get a free bottle of flexibility fuel, which is like a $50 bottle of flexibility fuel. Right. And so, all right, so some people may not want to spend that much money or not have access to that much money. For $13.96 or 69 cents, you can have it on a month-to-month basis. You can get through it in a week. Just take good notes. I'm not going to know if you screenshot your screen or whatever. I just want people to have access to it.
And there's
You know,
great information because I you let me probe around in it too, and
yeah.
there's a variety of information there that will appeal to different people at different times. So go on for a month, do what you need to do, start, and then sign up again when you want to get, a little bit more information perhaps too.
Yeah, for me, a lot of times when I was going, towards the three-quarters of the way through all this nonsense, I would keep referring back to my methylation cycle. Like, what am I missing? Like, what am I like? Oh yeah, I forgot about this gene that doesn't work well. So I'd go take the supplement for that, and I'd feel okay, feeling better, feeling good. And so it's good to be able to just keep going back to these things. Like, I don't do my meditation every day, but every day that I do it, I feel so much better. So like
Hmm.
I know, and so sometimes, oh great, I got to do this, I got to do
Hmm.
this, or let me try this. And it is, when I go into these Facebook communities and we're on one together, there are a couple, and I try to let people know, like people like, oh, someone needs to figure this out, find a solution. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that on.
Hmm.
Like I've always felt like I'm the person that needs to take on the heavy load. And so I did this. And then I go in and like, hey, everybody, I figured something out here. And I guess get called a scammer. I never had fibromyalgia. You should be giving this away for free. And I'm like, I spent 10 years of my life in chronic pain trying to figure this out. And now I have this really simple tool that is
Hmm.
super, super effective that it hurts my heart so much because I'm really here to help people. And of course, I want to make money, right? I would like to have this be my full-time thing where I can go out and I can help everybody, right? Like
Hmm.
that's more like if I don't make $1 million, I'm okay. But if I have the ability to live my life and then just help people, that's
Hmm.
all I want to earn.
Hmm.
And so for people to like come back and just be so angry. But then on the other hand, I understand it because I was so angry when I was in
Hmm.
chronic pain. I was
Hmm.
so negative when I was in chronic pain.
Hmm.
And I just think that, give the supplement a try. See if that works. If it does work for you, fantastic. Maybe
Hmm.
try the undo method or just, keep doing the supplement if you
Hmm.
feel like that's going to get you there. If it doesn't work for you in a way where it's noticeable, it still provides so much benefit because you're going to get a month worth of your daily essential amino acids, which
Hmm.
you're probably deficient in. It's got things that's going to help with oxidative stress. Things will happen that you may or may not notice,
Hmm.
but it's not like you're just going to throw that money away if you don't feel like some sort of loosening up of the body or chronic pain relief. There's a
Right.
lot.
And let's talk about realistic expectations here too, because getting into this severe state of imbalance
Yeah.
does not happen in a month, right? This is something
Right.
that compounds with a lot of different implements over a long time. So
And
just because
yeah.
pharmaceuticals say, here we go, we all know, and I mean, we know we've been there, we've taken
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals before. Maybe they're the magic pill for a short period of time. But all of a sudden, you're back at your doctor, you're asking for something more, something heavier, and then there's all these different side effects and all of these things. So we
Yeah.
can't also have the expectation that we're going to take a supplement or begin a practice or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, everything like lo and behold, this is the easy button, right? Remember that easy button?
Yeah,
You push the
yeah.
easy button and everything just
It's,
goes away and everything is like sunshine and rainbows. And I
yeah,
really don't believe that that's what this human experience is about. It's not about the easy button. It's about
right.
like loving
Working.
ourselves and
Yeah,
putting the effort, and we talked about consistency and all of these things in to create lasting changes that will help us thrive as we move forward in our
yeah,
lives. One thing each day a little better than the last. It doesn't
right.
have to be zero to hero.
Yeah. The first thing that I ever kind of went and got checked for was restless leg syndrome, right? And so then they wanted to do a sleep study on me, and I'm like, no, I have problems here in my legs. Like I'm not, having issues, sleeping. It's like my legs hurt. And they didn't give you any answers. Of course, I know what that is now. It's very
Yeah.
obvious that I just had really poorly constructed fashion. Like when you cut your turkey for Thanksgiving dinner, you guys don't do Thanksgiving, but
We
you
do,
see
just in October.
different. Okay. So you see how densely packed the muscle fibers are. Like
Right.
these muscle fibers, you have trillions and trillions
Hmm.
of muscle fibers,
Hmm.
all of them wrapped in collagen, every single one of them singularly wrapped in collagen.
Hmm.
And meaning whoever's listening, even if you're taking collagen supplements, it's missing the four cofactors to give the instructions to the amino acids, right? You need vitamin C, manganese, copper, and zinc. And if that's not in your diet, where your collagen is just building poorly, and when that happens, that's when those nociceptors, those pain receptors get aggravated. And that's where it's
Hmm.
coming from. That's where pain comes from, is the nociceptors. And so they gave me a narcotic to take. And I was just like, oh my God. I took it one day. I said, I'm never going back to that place again because that didn't do anything for me.
Hmm.
All that's going to do is slow me down. And that's what
Hmm.
everybody's being given. And what the supplement and the method, it fills a gap that's not being addressed, right? So there,
Hmm.
it's not like I've invented all this information. It's like, somebody said, oh, biofilms is the cause of fibromyalgia. So I'm like, okay, it's one of them, right? This causes, I'm like, oh, it's one of them. And so you find out,
Hmm.
oh, this is what we're all doing. All of these things are the things that we're doing, creating these things that creates these events, right? So it's like you
Yes.
gotta find out what's creating the event, which, I talk about the most obvious things in the undo method, what the event is, how to break down the event, right? On a chemical bond level, right? It's like WD-40. You spray it on rust and somehow rust disappears. It's because it's donating electrons to the rust, causing a break in the rust, and then it can be
Okay.
dissolved. And that's basically how flexibility fuel is intended to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So let's talk a little bit about the response
Yeah.
to flexibility fuel.
Okay, so this is important because I think there's four responses that you can get that I've noticed from everybody. So the first response, and this happens quite a bit, is day one. People are like, holy cow, what's in this stuff? My web developer is like, what kind of voodoo magic did you use in this? And she's mowed her lawn and did all this stuff. And I attribute that probably to the hyaluronic acid a little bit because you're holding on to more hydration, your stuff's gliding a little more smoothly. But some people are like right away, they start feeling something. Um, there's a girl that I'd been working with who had fibromyalgia really bad. It took her 2 weeks before she started noticing something. If you go on my Facebook page, she's Dan, you're a genius, and blah blah blah. It's the first time anything has ever worked for me. I just got an email back from Hugh Douglas from the former Philadelphia Eagle, All Pro. He's 2 weeks in. He's got now two other former Philadelphia Eagles that want to start trying it because he's having good results with it. Um, I've had a number of people, not a number, I've had two people who didn't realize that their pain went away until I called them. So the one guy reached for his phone, was like, oh my gosh, my shoulder doesn't hurt anymore. Because when pain
Wow.
goes away, you stop being reminded of it. You have to remind yourself that there was pain there. It's a really interesting,
So let's talk about that too. I
yeah,
believe this comes back to body awareness and the fact
yeah,
that so many people really aren't that aware of their body until something like that happens. And I
yeah.
believe that the body begins to speak. It begins to speak subtly and it begins to
Hmm.
speak gradually. And eventually the body screams. And for a lot of us, myself included, it was when the screaming started that I started to tune in. But
Yeah,
what if we can work with nutrition and mindfulness and somatics and all of these different things before the screaming starts? Imagine
yeah.
how beautiful we don't all have to go through these
Yeah.
difficulties.
I do want to say it's so there's been one person who didn't feel anything, and it was an
Okay.
older gentleman. So that was and so once again, it did something for him. I know it did health
Hmm.
wise. It just pain wise, it didn't. He didn't notice it, or he just didn't feel it. So there are a couple things I do have to mention. When these things start breaking down, it's like scaffolding that falls apart. Pain's going to shift around sometimes, right? You're going to be able to move, like my elbow, I could move so much faster because my tricep was so loose, but there was still a lot of hardened fascia up near your where your elbow joint is, because that's where all the harder connective tissue is. So now I'm pressing against that a little harder. So now I feel like I have an elbow injury. It's just because you're now aggravating those pain receptors in that area. I think everyone should look at the fascia in the human body because they're going to see that it aligns with where most of their pain is,
Hmm.
right? And
Yep.
that's where the pain receptors are, and that's where the hardened poorly built collagen and fibrosis mainly occurs.
Hmm.
So I think that's an important, anyone that's listening should probably just Google it real quick so they can be like, oh yeah, that's where my shoulders hurt. That's where my hip hurts. I also think a lot of women, especially anyone that's juicing spinach, almond milk, doing the beet juice powder, be very careful because
Hmm.
those oxalates are tied
Hmm.
to hysterectomies and fibroids, in the reproductive regions for women. And there are ways to remove them just with high dose lemonade and some calcium citrate. Sally Norton is someone, if you think you've got oxalate poisoning, she's the guru, Sally K. Norton. She's someone to look at. But if you're looking for a quick fix and you think you might have oxalates, you just juice 5 bags of lemons, throw some calcium citrate in there, and a little bit of water, and then drink that over the next 5 days. What will happen? What happened to me? You can see this on my Instagram. The last time I did it, I had a big calcium oxalate, a kidney stone basically come out of my chest. They come out through your skin. So it was like I laid on the beach when all of this came out. And I acupuncture myself. That's one of the things that I do. I would come across these oxalates in my body, and they're like as hard as diamonds. They were very
Hmm.
painful.
Hmm.
Luckily, I listened to a podcast on them, did the cleanse, and they started coming out through my skin. It's a really weird experience, but if you've been exposed to oxalate crystals or oxalic acid, it's something to consider. It's a huge driver in chronic pain and fibromyalgia.
Take little bits of things that align for you, begin to try them, and continue to build body awareness along the way. Because when you have body awareness, you're going to be able to understand what works and what does not work. And without that awareness connection, that connection of being mindful, and that's where, well, maybe touch briefly before we finish up on the mindfulness aspect because you bring that into your undo method. That's where I feel it's so very important. It's shutting off the mind, getting into a space of quiet receptivity, and being able to just explore what comes up in that area.
Yeah, yeah. So I had a really tough time starting out meditation. And then I found a guy, I think it's Meditation by Raf on YouTube. And so he was like, don't try to block out noise. What you're doing is, you're doing gratitude. You're looking for your pineal gland,
Hmm.
right? You're searching for it inwardly to connect to the energy of the ether of the universe. And so that inward search is the blocking out of the noise,
Hmm.
right? And so when I thought like, okay, how can I find a really easy way to introduce people to meditation where, because it's hard for some people. And so I created this one concept called 33 breaths. And it's like you basically 11 breaths in. Every time you breathe in, you're touching your fingers. And then on the 11th one, it's prayer hands up, breathing through your nose. Any yawn, you have to redo that breath because a yawn is a gift, right? Yawns help deliver oxygen up to the brain and do a bunch of other good stuff for us. So that's a gift. It's not a breath. So those first 11 are for you. Can I just get through them on my own, right? And then you can either do the next 11 right away or, at lunchtime or, what later. So then the next 11 I do immediately, and I'm grounding most of the time when I'm doing this. There for my gratitudes. So gratitude and anxiety can't exist together because they're in the very similar place in the brain. So once again, it's another biblical thing that I follow. If you're feeling your anxiety, you'd say your gratitudes. And so you start saying, thank you for my sons. Thank you for giving me this problem to discuss, to figure out. Thank you for the people I can help, whatever it might be. You do your thanks, once again, you do another 11. And then your next 11 is really to get into that deep meditative state, right? To really now you're connecting to the source, right? And that's another 11 breaths. And you do them as fast or as slow as you want to. Um, and then every time I do that, the rest of my day is just mentally easier, right? Even when I had the chronic pain, unfortunately, I find that I do it way more often when the weather's nicer, which I need to find a way to really be more consistent with it.
Hmm.
It's like drinking water. I know I still need to drink more water. But we have hard lifestyles. We are not moving at the speed of nature anymore, and that's how our body's supposed to move. And technology and information and politics and conspiracies and everything that's happening in our world that's occupying our time and our
Hmm.
brain is causing anxiety. And
Absolutely.
I've really realized that you're allowed to remove yourself from that algorithm.
Hmm.
So
You
you
certainly
don't
are.
have to participate in that. It's still going to happen without you,
Hmm.
but you
It
don't have to
does.
be involved in it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great information, Dan. So people can find that through the undo method because you break that down for them there as well. There are
Yeah.
lots of ways to begin meditation, and Dan shares his and I share mine.
I want to do
That's
yours.
available.
I definitely
It's
want you to take me through a little session. So,
Absolutely. I
yeah.
absolutely, I'll do a session for you. We can chat about that at the end.
Yeah.
But I feel that no matter what, if you are somebody who has a busy mind, who I would suggest the majority of the population do. I hear a lot of times people say, like, my mind's so busy, I can't meditate. Well, when your mind is busy, that is the perfect opportunity to begin to learn to meditate. And meditation doesn't have to be sitting for an hour like a stoic monk. Meditation can be done in different forms. Meditation can be walking outside and feeling your foot on the earth and feeling the heel and the center of your foot and each toe come down. And we can do walking meditation. There's a lot of different forms. Following your breath in and out of your body, drawing yourself back every moment that you come away. These are forms of meditation. And this skill of meditation helps to refine our focus so that we can then be more present in the moments that we have. And it is a skill and it is a practice and it is something that needs to be done on a regular basis. Meditation for me, probably a few years ago. So I've been practicing yoga over 20 years, but meditation became pretty much a daily practice for me a few years ago when I really, really needed to develop tools for myself, getting into my body and what I'm working toward for my offerings. And so meditation has been this beautiful gift. And just like you said, you feel better when you do it. I feel so much better when I do it. Even if I don't move my body very much, I find my meditation in and of itself is such a beautiful opportunity for reset, for connection, for presence. And it does give me the chance also to observe what's going on at that time. So if I'm feeling anxious in my meditation, then I can pause. You use gratitude, I use breath, however it is, and you come to recognize the responses of your body on a physiological and a thought or mental level that you wouldn't be able to do if you were rushing around your daily life.
Yeah, if I can add to that, I think it's also, I mean, for someone who's an athlete, it's important. That's one thing you said, it's practice, right?
Hmm.
You cannot be good at it right away. You can't expect to be good at it right away. If you think you can be, then, you need to realize that everything is practice, and I'm
Yes.
never going to perfect it, thank gosh, So I'm gonna, but what I can do is now that I'm practicing it, I can pass it on to my boys at a much younger age than when I learned how to do
Hmm.
it. And I can get them to sit and pause and take that breath so they can have that in their toolbox when they find themselves in those situations that I would have gotten into a fight in because I let myself get worked up to a certain point. And so I think, learning all of this stuff and especially passing it on to our children
Hmm.
because childhood arthritis is at like this all-time high now, and it's because
Yeah.
we're feeding our kids the same thing we're feeding ourselves that's
Yeah.
causing all this inflammation. So, yeah, yeah. So it's just, learn it, be intentional, and make it a lifestyle. Have a great relationship with yourself and your food.
Absolutely. And I think these, everybody take from our conversation what resonates for you. Something resonates for you, great, try it, reach out to Dan, reach out to myself if you have any questions. Dan, how can people connect with you?
So, my website, if they want to go to the website, it's undu.me, so undo.me. And there you can find a link to where the Undu Method is. It's on a different platform called withme.so/undo method. It's where you kind of host training things. But if they want to connect with me on social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, it's all Undu Method, UNDUMETHOD. You can email me directly if you would like to. It's at a Gmail. Don't give out my personal email, but it's getespofit@gmail.com. That's one where I kind of get all of that, information where I can pare it down. But I have a Facebook page where I think it's probably a better forum to ask questions if you're not going to sign up for the Undo Method. But you can sign up for the Undo Method, our community for free at the withme.so/undo method, and have access to like posts that I do and things like that. Ask me questions there. I'll probably be much more responsive there as we're building that community. We're building it as a very positive community, like not complaining, like let's find things that work.
Hmm.
If you want to contribute, then contribute there, just positive things. But then you can have access, to the world's greatest shopping list, or you can have access to the Undo Method and things like that. But I'd say that's probably where I'm going to spend the most of my time as I build this out, is at my own community. But the Facebook community, is probably a really good place to go if you don't want to sign up. And if you get through to me on email, great. I'll try to answer as many as I can. But I got two boys, two jobs, two chihuahuas, and I got a lot of stuff going on.
For
So
sure. And there's lots of
yeah,
places to connect. So if you can
yeah,
connect with Dan,
yeah,
maybe on his own platform, I'd say go there. Go to your platform first,
yeah,
check it out, see what you have there, learn a little bit more about Dan and his story and what he offers.
yeah.
He's
And
got a
I'll help as many people as I can for free. Once again, I'm not in this. I mean, I hope people are buying my supplement and that's sustained, and I can do all of this for free. Like that would be fantastic for me, where I can just help people all day and get them toward their healing.
We need
But
some of the pharmaceutical companies on board for that. We
they're
need some.
probably going to try to snuff me out. Yeah, they're like, well, we're gonna call you a quack or something, you know?
We'll keep it
Yeah.
flowing. We'll keep it flowing. I mean,
But yeah, I thought,
amazing.
I want to work with, my stepmom had her knee replaced. I wanted her to not get it replaced. I said, wait till my flexibility fuel comes out, but she got it replaced anyway. And then 2 weeks later, she was driving with full range of motion after using flexibility fuel.
Amazing.
So it's, for people who are post, you know, knee replacement, I think it's a really
Mhm.
good addition to your therapy.
Right. And I feel like, Dan, you don't even have to be in a chronic state of disease or anything to have this, right? This can be
No,
something that can be
it's very
helpful to,
preventative.
yeah,
Yeah, super.
yeah.
Not only is it very preventative because we're eating all these things that cause the things that this stuff gets rid of or helps get rid of, but it's also your essential amino acids,
Hmm.
right? And I mean, if you look to see where your essential amino acids are, if you're not eating a significant amount of meat on a daily or weekly basis, you're going
Hmm.
to be deficient in
Yeah,
essential amino acids. And that's all the repair synthesis, et cetera, but so many neurocognitive benefits as well with dopamine and
hmm.
serotonin and things that are going to make you feel better. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Great. Okay,
I call it
so
the world's greatest supplement.
all
So
right,
that's yeah,
flexibility fuel
yeah.
and Undu Method. Dan, is there anything else that you wanted to share or say before we close our conversation today?
No, I just want to thank you for such a great interview. It was such a great time.
Yay. Well, thank you. It's been
Yeah.
lovely to connect with you. And, you and I have had some chat in kind of behind the scenes as well. I hope we'll continue that on. And as things continue to move, I'd love to have you back on and see how
Oh,
things
perfect.
are going and see where things are, in that journey in your community, for
Awesome.
sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Amazing.
definitely.
Well, thank you
Okay,
so
thank
much for your
you.
time today. It was
Yeah.
lovely to chat with you, Dan. Thanks so much for tuning in to Feel, Peel, Thrive. I'm so grateful you're here and part of this space for reflection and growth. If something from today's episode spoke to you, please share it with a friend or someone who might need it. And take a moment to rate, comment, or leave a short review for me on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. It really helps the podcast to grow and keeps these conversations flowing to more people who are ready to shift how they see health and healing. Together, we can help more people feel, peel, and thrive from the inside out.